So this is a 1990, I think. I actually forgot to check, but it doesn't really matter. Anyway, so 1990 Johnson 115 horsepower. Okay, let me actually look see what this thing is. All right, turns out it's 1992, and it's 90 horse. That was close. But anyway, so not going to be doing much of this thing, but figured I'd show you how to work the power trim and tilt on the bench. So let's dive into that one. A little backstory on this thing. The guy said it made funny noises, so he didn't want it anymore and thought I might be able to use it, which I will. I have a 90 horse VRO motor sitting over in the corner, so between the two we can probably get one good one out of this thing, but I'll throw it in the corner until I'm done with some other projects. Anyway, look at this. You see it? Think that's any good? That's hilarious. Anyway, so to bench test it here, first thing you got to do is hook up battery cables. So the negative one, there's a stud, so you got to find this nut with a stud on it. So there's a ground point right there. Probably pretty easy to attach it to that. A little in there, a little hard to get to. So what I'll probably do is just bolt it into about here somewhere. But if you didn't have random bolts hanging around, just get it in right there. So I attached the negative right here using a little 1/4x20 flathead. Easy to get to, easy to reach. You wouldn't want to use that if you're permanently using this motor because that might get in the way of all kinds of stuff. And I'm going to attach the positive side here to our starter solenoid, to this guy right here. That looks a little tight, somebody wrench and tighten that down. I got my bench battery here. Usually I wouldn't use these clips. I would use some, well, if you had a marine battery, that's obviously the way to go because they have little, wing nuts. But this works just because I'm too lazy to get some little adapters, and it works fine. It's a good battery. Anyway, usually I would use some vice grips, clamp it on there good and tight, but I ain't really trying to start this thing just to use the power trim and tilt, so that should work out fine. So what you're going to find on this type of motor anyway, the power trim and tilt controller box. You got a couple of wires coming out. This big one here, usually you wouldn't see round plug. This was only on a few years of motors, but this connects to the power trim and tilt motor itself, so we don't necessarily need to mess with that unless there's a problem with this box. This one has these little leads coming out here. Looks like a blue and other blue wire. This is for the limit switch that's on the tilt tube, so it can't go up too high. This set of wires here, don't know what the green one's about. Anyway, this is the center unit. So to work the gauge, tell you where it's at. You have this wire, which is what we'll be dealing with. And there's also some more wires coming out of it over here, and that connect to the switch on the actual motor itself. So as you can see, simply some power and it starts working. And as you can also see, this isn't actually doing anything, so that's kind of a problem. But we can tackle that in a sec. If you don't have a switch on the back of your motor, what you're going to be looking for is this plug. Most of the time they're going to look like this, a lot of the time. So you got two ways to do this. You could get yourself a power trim and tilt harness, which is this guy, and plug it into a controller. Or there's some other ways. So I'll give you an idea. This would go onto here. I'm not going to force it in there because it ain't no big deal. And then this would plug in the controller, giving you a switch. But we don't necessarily need to do that because I don't feel like finding a controller. So if you don't have a harness, a controller, or a switch on the side, you don't need one. This is a 5-position plug. We have a red, a green, and a blue wire. And on the back, we got a black and a white. Sometimes you'll see two whites, you'll see a black, see two blacks. Combination doesn't really matter. What you're after is the red, green, and blue. So what a switch does is it takes the red wire and connects it to the green, or it takes the red wire and connects it to the blue. So you can duplicate that via a piece of wire. You put one end into the red, and put the other in the blue. And that is how to operate your motor without it really being hooked up to much. So if you notice, this one's not working, so we're going to try to figure out why. So I haven't actually done anything to this engine yet, so I don't know if this is going to be the case. But past experiences have shown me, when a person decides to buy a new engine for the boat, usually this engine is tilted up. They disconnect their electronics, they take off their controller, they take out the battery, they undo the cables, they take the battery cables off, they're almost ready to pull it off, and then they remember their engine's tilted all the way up, and they got no way to pull it out. So rather than hooking all the electronics back up to get it back down, they hit the manual release valve, engine lowers, and they go about their merry way. So now that I'm on the correct side of the engine, I can actually check this. Get a big flathead, find the screw. So it's pretty loose. So we tighten this down. Now we try to raise the motor and see if it works. Now I could use the switch on the side, but if you don't have one, this won't help for you, and where's the fun in that? So, now granted this is a little crude, but you know, works fine. Well, no real improvement yet. Yeah, there we go. Well, went all the way down, went all the way up, so let's go up and make sure it doesn't give us any issues. So, see how I'm stopping it back down? Abruptly stop, and then it kind of shakes a little bit. If the power trim main hydraulic there was leaking, it would slowly start making its way down. By just randomly abruptly stopping it, it kind of shakes it a little, and if it moves, it's gonna go down. Doesn't look like this is moving at all. So yeah, I think the power trim and tilt unit in this thing is actually still good. Yep, I say it's fine. So now I'll be removing the power trim and tilt. So there's a hole in the bottom of the cowling that the power trim and tilt wiring runs through. It goes in like so. It's got a little grommet attached, and you don't really see the wiring. Kind of neat. The problem, let me rotate the camera here and I'll show you. This motor being as new as it is, it has this small harness here which attaches to the tilt tube, and there's a little limit switch back there. So it basically prevents you from constantly running the power trim and tilt unit past its point of stopping. So that wire runs through here, runs into the bottom, and it runs through this harness. So we can't exactly force, let me rotate here, we can't get this through that hole to remove the power trim and tilt unit with this wire in place. So what we need to do is remove this expanded cable. So that's kind of unfortunate, but it's kind of the only real way you're doing it. That center unit down below the tilt tube can't fit through that hole, so it's not like you can work your way around it. If you didn't need it, I suppose you could cut the wires here and feed the entire thing through, but given how frayed this already is, it's not really going to make a difference. So we're going to have to cut this off. So you can use a razor knife here. I've never actually experienced much luck doing that. So I'm going to just use some scissors. I'm going to slide the grommet to the end, and then slide the expanded tube past the grommet. The ends are usually going to be a little melted on there. In this case, not so much, but just kind of follow it along, making sure you don't get any wires in there. So with that off, kind of makes sense now. The grommet, you should be able to squeeze the little wires through. Got a zip tie there. Get that off. And there is our tilt limit switch. Now, the other set of wires here is the sender for the power trim and tilt. So that should fit through the grommet holes well here. Probably go if I forced it enough. Well, actually just twist it and gets going. You don't want to pull in the wires here too much because you don't want to pull the pin out of the connector body. Alright, so now the power trim and tilt unit is, well, its wiring is independent from the rest of it. And that's kind of what we're left with. So, not too shabby. So now we'll get the engine tilted up and we'll start removing the unit itself. So with the wiring already disconnected, you could either re-hook it up to the relay box under the hood here, or you can just hook up some wires. So what I'm going to be doing is I got some male terminals crimped onto a little section of wire here. And I'll just plug that in. Plugs to the top, plug in the bottom. See what I mean? And then I can connect it to bench battery here. So I went the right way. And that's a good spot for it. So safety first. I pulled the lower unit off this motor. I attached one of these eye bolts, and then I used the chain from the rafters there to support the back of the motor. Should this thing go crumbling down on me, this will be a little backup safety thing. So keep that in mind. So first thing you want to do is get this trim rod out. Now this kind of has a weird round spring holding it in. So you need to get in here with something, small. A small screwdriver would probably work. I'm using a razor blade. And get it kind of opened and turned a little. Let me move the camera a little closer for you. Put it back to where it was. So that's kind of what it looks like. But if you notice, it's got a little spot there. So you can get in there with something and kind of get it expanded. And you can kind of start getting it off. So that's off, and now the rod will slide out. Now, I like to put it back on so I don't lose it, but that's just kind of my prerogative. Because of how I have the engine attached to the bench with this clamp here, this rod is going to hit this, so I'm not going to take it out from this side, I'm going to pull it out the other way. But we still have a C-clip inside of here, it's got to come out. So I'll be using my pair of channel lock pliers here. They slip off. I think I have the smaller end on it. Yeah, it came right out, so that's good. There's the ring. We've got another one up here we should get out now. Yeah, honestly, it doesn't really matter when you get it out. Kind of in a bad angle. Gonna see if I can't rotate it a little. Apparently it's an even worse angle. There we go. So now what I'm going to do is operate the power trim and tilt to get the weight off of the ram here. So, yeah, a little more. So this is a little tough because the hydraulic or the chain is kind of pulling it back up, not really allowing it to go where I want it to. But it does kind of feel a little loose. So we'll see how it goes. So I have this old extension. It's a half-inch drive. See, the end is pretty mushroomed from me doing this so many times. It's a pretty good tool. It's nice and flat onto this pin, so I don't really score it or do any damage to it when it comes out. Hopefully this goes okay. Sometimes I do, sometimes I don't. I'll try to keep my hands out of the way to give you as much viewing as I can. I'll go to the other side. And we can kind of tap it out the rest of the way now. Now the engine's kind of balancing, and the pin's about out. So it's got some play now. And our pin is out, it didn't hit the ground. And that is what it looks like. But again, I don't like to lose parts. So what I do is I put the clips back on it. Pretty much guarantee yourself you ain't going to lose them. Unless you lose the whole thing. Alright, so that's back together. So I'm going to jiggle the motor and pull my tool out. Like so. And it'll, seems like it'll fall forward now at this point, so I don't really want it to do that because I think it'll go a little too far. So, with my back elbow, I'm going to push the engine down. With the other hands, I'm going to operate the power trim tilt down to get that ram moved. Hopefully I can do this okay. Perfect. So now I can let some of my chain out and let the engine fall backwards a little bit. Yeah, seems like that's a good spot. Okay. Notice now it's pretty loose. So what's holding it together is now the bottom pin. So let me show you what I do now. Working on heavy, engines here. So if something happens, you can hurt yourself pretty easily. So what I do now that I have this open is put something in there as a secondary backup catch, if you will. So if this thing does come crumbling down and my arm's in here, that'll stop it. Now the chain's hooked up too, so they'd both have to fail for me to get hurt, but, it's better safe than sorry. With the engine now in the down position, we, power trim tilt anyway, we can feed our wiring through. You don't want to have to do this later. Okay, push it, get it started. If you can find it anyway. Feels like there might be a clip or something holding it in, so let me look on the other side. It's not a clip or anything. It's the sender. The wires run through there. So I'm going to pull the sender out now. Kind of have to. Have a series of extensions hooked up. Get the bolts kind of loosened. So that is out. So you pull the wires through there. Now, it looks like the power trim and tilt and the sender unit share the same ground wire. Let's see if you can see here. You can't see it all. So see it right there? So you can cut the end off or pull that bolt out. So I'm going to be pulling that bolt out. That is the motor, so no big deal pulling one bolt out. So I'm going to pull that bolt out and pull the terminal, put the bolt back. Apparently I knocked the tripod of the camera loose. Bolts out, move the terminal. Nice bolt too. I think this motor was probably replaced, or just that fresh water of a motor, I guess. I don't know. Anywho, tighten that bolt back down. Make sure we don't have any problems. Perfect. Now we can get the wire out. So see how it's looped under? With that power trim and tilt in the way, that sender in the way, we never got the wires out. Sometimes you get lucky, sometimes you don't. So I'm feeding the grommet through now. Grommet, plug. Don't need my my wires in there anymore. Okay, so now it's kind of independent on its own. Now when we actually go to pull this unit out, it's going to be going on a lot of weird angles. So you don't lose and then step on the bushings, just take them out now. Now I need the hammering rod again. So my goal here is to replace the main rod with my new smaller diameter, easier to handle rod. So that, took that out. There's the old rod. I'm going to put the clip back on the end, but now it's pretty much ready to come out. So the unit weighs 18 pounds, I believe, about. I'll weigh it for fun here later. So it's not light, but not heavy either. It's just an awkward spot. Also, the engine kind of being at a slight downward tilt might kind of get in the way. Let's hope it doesn't, but should it, we'll deal with it. So lift it up. On my other hand, I'm sliding my rod out. It will kind of balance itself in there a little. Now, these newer ones. There we go. No weird having to spread open these or anything. They usually come right out. So nothing to it, right? Well, there is the unit removed. The camera flash is still on, so that's kind of annoying. Now one thing to keep in mind, bushings. When you move these things around ready to install it, you're cleaning up your motor, you're going to put it in. You put this on an angle, you lose a bushing, you got to put it back in, you realize you're missing a bushing, then you got to find one, holds up your build for 2 weeks. So anyway, take them out, keep them separate, don't lose them, or step on them. Okay, I got the scale here zeroed out, so we're going to see what this thing weighs. Just kind of curious anyway. And then it goes. Let's try this again. Okay, try number 2. Now it's resting on the motor a little bit, so it's a little off. It looks like we're at about 17 pounds. And by about, pretty much right on. So, now you know about one of these ways. Well, that's the end of this video. Hope you enjoyed it. Hope you found it helpful. Maybe someday you'll see me putting it back in, but for now, nah. Alright, have a good one.